Here's my confession, my true belief. Look at me, I am the living proof that end can mean relief. I'm gracious, but there's something you should know. You have large shoes to fill, so welcome to my freak show. Here in my netherworld, I live here in my netherworld. Other man is disappearing. Oh, finally your duties come clear. Sing to me, all you voices of doom. Come and sing to me. Oh, let me hear the sound I like. Cry for me. All you voices of doom. Come and sing, sing, sing to me. Your sweet perdition, I'm lunacy. Look around, 'cause this is so different from what you thought you'd need. Well, I'm driven by 666, my dear. No way back, no way out. Been lost before you came here. Here in my netherworld, I live here in my netherworld. Other man is disappearing. Yeah, finally your future's so clear. Sing to me, all you voices of doom. Come and sing to me. Oh, let me hear the sound I like. Cry for me. All you voices of doom. Come and sing, sing, sing to me. So come on, sing, sing. So come on, sing now. So come on, sing, sing to me. All you voices of doom, come on, sing to me. Oh, let me hear the sound I like. Cry for me. All you voices of doom, come on, sing, 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 sing. Oh, come on, sing for me tonight. Sing for me tonight. Oh, let me hear the sound I like. Cry for me.
Good evening and welcome back to Shenzhen IO, where last time after explaining why I couldn't possibly do the improvise an entire game live on stream, we started improvising the game live on stream. Well, okay, that was because Simon gave me a suggestion as to what game we should do, and it matched one of my ideas, and I realised we had a random number generator now, and we got about halfway through. So let's see how it's going. This is more crowded than I remember. But I did have some ideas in bed Friday night about how we could improve things. In particular, it's going to be really hard to remember the patterns when these are arranged in a line rather than as they should be in a circle. So we really need to fix that. Obviously, they can't quite be arranged in a circle. They can be arranged in a square, but with 4 points, you can't really tell the difference. And I did work out how to do that, and if it's possible, I can still remember. So one idea that I had, and I'm just trying to work out if it's actually feasible, was to fwibble things so that the top light and button are the ones connected to the simple I/O port, which will essentially move these components down a bit and give us a bit more space.
Oh yeah, there was a topology, wasn't there?
And yes, and the other thing is to try to organise things so that these are actually in an approximately circular layout rather than a line, because I think it's going to be much easier to remember the sequence you're meant to be entering if you put them in a circle rather than a line. Yeah. So let's move some bits out of the way. And then we'll wire it all back up again in a bit. And I'll try to remember. So my idea for the layout started with I mean, the obvious thing to do... Oops. No, go away. I am beginning to think I might need to actually ask Dell to mend my laptop's right trackpad button. Well, we can arrange things in a square like that, and we can stick some... Well, we can't quite stick the buttons in the LEDs as we should, but we can put them next to the LEDs. But there's a slight problem with that, which is that we need to get the wires from these two buttons over to this side, and the wires from these two LEDs over to this side through 2 units of space, which doesn't work. But then I did have an idea about that, which is that if we do... What is it? Something like that, then we can get all those connections in. But that, of course, isn't a square. That's a parallelogram. That's also not quite a square. It's not quite a rhombus. It's close to being a rhombus. But I think if my geometry is correct, if we do that is a square. So now the question is, can I sort out the wiring in that much space?
I use that square in some
Yes.
or something.
Or possibly it was something you asked LaTeX to do because it had the correct angles for LaTeX.
Yes, that would be it. It's much more just if I use that square for tiling things because of the slopes, yes.
I was going to say, wasn't it for the speckle in map?
There was that. I think you put it in there. You put it basically.
So now what I want to do, I think, is to cram everything as far to the left as I can, given that. Let's just erase those tracks for now. Well, actually, maybe we shouldn't erase those tracks because we know we're going to need them. and then we can work on how we fit everything else around them. So I think we also want to do that, which is
It wasn't quite
fine.
that then. It was because those are root 17, root 17, root 16 triangles, and they will look quite equilateral. Because you've only got the vectors in slope at the 4. That's if they 1, 4, 4, 1 and 2, 2.
So I think then, so I think we'll still stick with having it be the left-hand side that does the stupid swapping manoeuvres. So that wants to go to P2 on the IO expander. That wants to go to P1, so maybe we just wire that straight in. That's going to be tricky if we go around that side.
Yes. I just heard, you're not the only pebble. There are plenty more pebbles on the beach. Not the only fish on the beach.
So,
I think
and then that one wants to go to P0. So I think we can't quite do this if we put the IO expander there. I think we need to pull it forward to there.
ooh. Exciting opportunities going on.
So I think that gets the bottom 3 LEDs wired up, reversed on this.
T junctions do. How can you have a T junction?
If we want 2 things to receive the same signal. So that button
Yeah.
will now signal to both, turn on that LED, because obviously when you press the button the corresponding light should come on.
Okay.
And the easy way to achieve that is simply to wire the button straight to the light.
Oh, right, okay.
Um,
So within the bottom side cables coming up both sides.
yes, but this way I don't use up that square connecting up to that LED, and I think we have to use different ports on the LED for the button and the signal input. Right, and then the topmost LED can just be connected up like that. So based on that, I can't move this lot any further to the left, which is slightly annoying. Unless I can come up with a layout around here.
Can you rotate them 90 degrees? About
No, everything only rotates by 180 degrees, annoyingly. So yes, I don't think I
What
can.
do you do currently, sorry?
Well, I'm mostly going, can I shift the LED button setup 1 square to the left?
Right.
So as to, just to give myself more space to think with on the right, but I don't think I can. So I think this has to fit, has to go more or less where it is. Right, so that then means I need to rewrite P0 to P1 in there. That's fine.
Well, hang on, can't you? Oh no, no, you can't bridge over 2 cables at once.
No.
There you
I mean, when thinking about this, I kept wanting to go, can I just stick a wire from there to there, please? But no. Maybe, well, that was another thought I had. Maybe when we get to go to our utopian city-state on an artificial island in the high seas, maybe they'll let us have double-layer circuit boards.
go. And can you go straight from the bridge to a bridge?
No. I mean, you have to have a piece of track in between. Right, so let's organise this side. Can't go quite that far in because it needs to not connect to the LED. That doesn't work. That's not the problem. Right, so I think actually just to make ourselves a bit more space, let's go. That. So I've got some space up there if I need it. Now where did we get with the coding? Right, and then it responds to button presses. It listens for button presses but doesn't do much with them.
Is it possible to do
Well, the
something
touchscreen doesn't work.
Is it possible that you could say, for example, move this thing...
Oh, actually, why don't... Yeah, carry on.
that thing down to there, and have that connecting and that connecting in, and then this one here bridges over that one, and then goes down there.
I don't think we can get all those bridges in.
Because my thought... Because that's all down one layer, you can have... Because if that's coming across sort of like that,
But
you can
I mean,
bridge across the first one then over that. Does that work?
I'm not sure I can understand quite what your
So
plan is.
if that were down there,
So you mean one down, one to the left?
yeah, so right at the very bottom,
Yes.
then that one goes sort of across as usual.
Yeah, and it can connect to the bottom left of that LED instead.
Okay, fine.
That's fine.
That one will still come down to here, joining in down at that point there now. I think this one needs to cross over this wire and this wire at some point.
Oh,
And
I think-
this one here, if that one were to go up like that to do it, then maybe it could bridge across horizontally and then down over
you
that
can't
one.
bridge horizontally.
Huh?
All bridges have to be vertical. This is not, I think, in practice a problem because obviously you can swap which is a bridge and which is not a bridge. Mostly.
Okay. Well, then maybe it could.
I'll have a quick experiment and see if I can.
Well, except that if you look down at that cross on the bottom left, if you had a horizontal bridge instead of a vertical bridge, you wouldn't be able to have it connect directly to a thing.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
So if in a similar situation, you might...
Can you save the states? You will reverse this if you need to.
It's only this area.
Okay.
It's not going to be much for faff to see what we can do. I can't remember if you can undo program changes.
Because if you need to, the green line joining to the middle thing can always go up a notch and come down again. That one goes down on that thing.
So then that needs to connect to P0, right? So the general idea is we do that. Yes, you're quite right.
The top connection, I'm not sure how it's going to fit in yet, because the top of course can go up one, can't it, if it needs to. Then you could bridge, come down.
So we can do that, which is
another bridge beneath it.
precisely as inefficient as what we already had. Hang on, where's this going? Oh, it's going to P2, isn't it? Yes.
But no, you could join it horizontally, of course, rather than over the very top, can't you? How's that not bring us? That's not bring us anything at all.
So that's left us with everything in the same position. I mean, yes, we can make that slightly less weird by... No, we can't. By doing that, which is also precisely as inefficient as what we had before.
Well, I suppose something's still there.
Yes, I accept that. I'm slightly wondering what happens if we attempt to rotate the whole thing by 1 unit anti-clockwise. But no, that doesn't work because then all the tracks end up colliding with one another. It has to be this way round if the buttons are above the LEDs. But I suppose we can move the buttons below the LEDs and crank the whole lot anti-clockwise a bit, on the grounds that we've got more space in this corner than we've got in this corner. But that is quite a lot of faff. But it does also move this lot down if we put the buttons below, which is good because it gives us more space up here where we're probably going to want another processor.
Not actually a battery thing on the top of the desk, just beneath a random generator.
That's
Beneath that one.
yes.
Can that go in the top right corner?
It then needs 2 tracks connecting it into this area because it has that track and that track, and there's only one space for one track through here.
And it can't come into the LED from the right.
Technically it can. No, it can't because we've got to get this track through here. There isn't actually any space here to run in another track. So we really do have to have that be one X-bus line coming in. So yes, I think if we turn everything the other way, we gain another square. There is a slight question of whether it's worth all of the faff. Everything fits, but except that we haven't got the program that actually validates you press the correct buttons yet. So we're probably going to need another processor at some point to fit some more program into, and that's going to need some wiring. Yeah, I'm going to rework the whole thing again. Because I think it'll give us.
On the left-hand side currently, there's more space in the middle than the bottom. So can you make your square all shifting around one? Is that what you're going to do?
I'm trying to turn it.
As in go from that to that.
Yes, but this is quite complicated because it also means that the switches have to go below the LEDs so that their tracks can get out on the right still. So I'm first doing that swap. And then, yeah, that's the first move. So I've swapped them round, but oh no, you're quite right. I'm not. That's not right. That's right, isn't it? But now, of course, this thing can't get its track out to. Well, I suppose technically it can. It can sneak it through that gap. Oh yeah, but you end up with crossing tracks. But now what I want to do now is rotate this. So this one goes to there, this one goes to there, this one goes to there, and this one goes to there. Right. And then my hope is that now we can probably shuffle them left one square in a bit. Though I'm not so... I think we may have to go back to my original design that doesn't stick up so much here.
Claire is making a craven but practical suggestion.
No. It's a 4-button game. Absolutely not. Remember, we're not actually trying to... It's not that we've run into an insoluble problem here. It's that I'm trying to optimise this thing so that we won't run into insoluble problems shortly.
But of course, if every optimisation here leads to a insoluble problem, this is an insoluble problem.
Yes. Right, so now my expectation is I can also move one square to the left. So I'm going to do that in a really optimistic fashion. So that at least is easy. Right, so down here, I think we want to go back to the jumping over the back side of the things.
Currently your cable from the top left light is going out through the middle of the right hand two lights, is that right?
from... Hang on. Oh, yes, that one's meant to go to that, isn't it now? So that track has to engage in some serious silly buggers. Give me a moment. I think I can do it. So I think that's what's meant to happen up there. And then I think I'll go back to routing P0 round the back here because I think that's less confusing. And then P1 goes there. Hang on, no, P1 goes there. Oh. Yes, maybe this doesn't work. Because P2 has to go to there. And that could be a bridge, but then we can't actually get P1 out. Does it turn out that actually I haven't gained any space like this? Or just that I'm a stoat? Just to be clear, we'll also have that and that and that and that and
if you had a button immediately to the right of a light, can they join together across a 2020 almost zero width?
yes.
But I randomly thought, could you have a square where you have the lights like that and the buttons all stacked in the middle? So you would know which button goes to which, but as in have like lights here, light, two stack buttons, light, two stack buttons, light.
Yes, but it would be ugly. I want the buttons to be in a square.
Okay.
So my problem now is that P1... we can at least check things here. P2 and P2 are both wired to the same thing, so I've got that bit right. So then the only tricky thing is getting P1 out there. So yes, if I move all of this right one square to where we had it before, it's fine.
And I suppose the solution where you move
And that still improves matters over here, to be fair.
move that left hand 3 thing onto the left, but the fatal thing before doesn't do anything differently.
I don't think it helps us any more. Indeed, it may help us less because we've got this thing. That ended up with quite a big stack of stuff up this side. Okay, we'll move it back to the right. But that's still not. This is still an improvement because I can arrange this side better as a result. At least I think I can. Right. So then we do and P2 goes to that one, doesn't it? Yes. I mean, it's possible there's some other trick that involves... Yeah, that's what I'm worried. That's what's worrying me at the moment.
Ooh, that's just silly.
No, hang on. P2.
You can go down one to the left of there. Yes.
That's what that was what I meant to build.
Okay.
I mean, it's possible, of course, we could find a different way of wiring up the bits to That's not right.
The top right.
Yes.
White machine, let's say the current machine.
Yes. P1 on the processor and P1 on the processor go together. That wire there is meant to go to that button, so that's slightly inconvenient. So I think we should move that downwards, and then P2 goes to there, P1 goes to there and to there.
Is it not from? Oh, so they must go to P0.
Yes. And P0 goes to there. And yes, similarly, if we do that, then we save a bit of space because the... no, we don't. We can't wire it into that pin. Okay. Because then... Then we'll have two outputs connected to one another. The output from that button and the output from that P1, and that's not allowed. I don't quite know what will happen if we do that. But which X-bus port on this are we meant to be wiring up? X1, obviously, yes. So that can be done simply by moving that down to there. Right. So now we have a fair amount of space which we might be able to put something in up there if we can work out what on earth we want to put there. Also, we could actually... We've got a lot of slack in these. We could move... that left by 1, that left by 2, and that left by 3, which would give us even more space in the top right corner. No. Right, so vastly extravagant micro optimizations being being completed.
I know it's easy one square that we can't use.
You're right, I can't use that square. Okay, we'll make it prettier.
Unless you put a button in the ratio or something.
Right, vastly over extravagant micro optimizations being finished with. Maybe I have to do some programming.
You want to do that last, have one giant space in the corner rather than two small?
Well, yeah, okay, if you insist. Right, so that's everything crammed into the bottom left corner of the map.
I want you to move the bottom left thing up now into that annoying space.
Leaving that gap there.
Yeah, and it will get rid of the zigzag you've got in the middle of P1's cable.
You go up one square and then use that. That then disposes of that wiggle, which doesn't actually help us because that will then collide with that button.
No, it doesn't help at all. It won't hinder it.
Well, it means that you can connect to the top port of the bottommost LED, and that leaves you a whole 2x2 space down at the bottom that isn't going to be used for anything.
Yes.
You can half it up 2 notches, possibly.
No, then everything gets horrible. Then that P1 wire doesn't end up doing anything correct. Right, anyway. But as I said, now we may actually have to do some programming, which means I have to think about how the hell this thing's going to work. So,
This is the bit I have no idea about solve.
so at the moment, the top right processor correctly handles lighting 4 lights in series, in sequence, or n lights, where n is currently what's in that MOV, and then sleeping, waiting for me to press buttons. and a little bit of other stuff too. So the question is there some sane way we can... So first it should really turn the lights off. Which I think is actually a fairly simple job of doing MOV 0x2 at some point. Obviously we don't have enough space for that. So one possibility is something like we have one processor that handles send. So what do we need? So we've got. So at the moment we are using 3 instructions, which seems a bit of an extravagance, for wait for the system to become, wait for the RAM to become ready. And I realised, yes, that was one thing I realised, was that we don't need to do that, because it doesn't actually take. We only actually need the first element of the RAM to be set up, and after Simon and Ian, I can't remember quite who was responsible for which bits, sorted out that we didn't ever have any retries in this. We know how long it will take for the first element of the RAM to be ready. First element of the RAM is ready after 1 time unit. So slip 1, first element of the RAM is ready, we can turn on the first light. So actually this silly little loop at the top can be erased entirely and just replaced with a slip 1. There we go. If we just re-simulate it, we should make sure that it lights up different LEDs first time to prove that the first number does correctly get passed through. Yes. So there we are. Now we're no longer carefully waiting for the RAM to become ready. That also incidentally means we can remove that rather silly track. And we can remove the code that signals readiness. Right, so now we've got 2 spare instructions here. Right, one of those has to be to turn the lights off. Turn off the caps lock light. Right, so now all the lights go out. Excellent. We've got 1 spare instruction. This may not be quite enough to do the job, but it might be. And we're going to need something that does, like, because somehow we're going to have to signal like success and failure. I mean, okay, technically success is signalled by you eventually cause the system to crash somehow by using it. If you can manage to remember 33 button presses, then yes, you probably just break the system somehow. I'm now wondering if we can do a cleverer job of these wirings by having the 2 permutation, having neither of them be the null permutation, but instead have 2 slightly smaller permutations, rather than having reversal on one side and null permutation on the other. Have something that does 1 swap on one side and the other swap on the other side.
I wondered that briefly, but it's a swap rather than a cycle.
Yes.
I thought before if you were a 3 cycle, you could transpose here and here, but it's a single swap, and so you can't do it.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Person who knows group theory. Sorry, Dr. Person who knows group theory. Right, so
It hadn't previously occurred to me to consider that this game is about gradually building up an element for free monoid.
So,
Because you've got a free mod generated by the 4 buttons. Every
Oh, sorry, this game, not
Yeah.
not Shenzhen IO.
I see, right, no,
That's what
we have got 2 games involved here.
that's what really confused me. Yes, silent, yes.
don't.
Right. So I'm thinking we may need, rather curiously, we don't really need anything to announce success, but we might want something to announce failure. Yes. Well, we do have a thing that can go buzzed. Well, we've got 2 things that can go buzzed actually. We've got that thing, and we've got that thing.
Well, I would recommend one takes up this stuff.
FM radio. FM Blaster.
It's a small sound card, a not very useful sound card, of course. Or there's just a thing that goes beep to tell you you've messed things up. Well, convenient, you've got a spare P there. Let's wire that up.
Honestly, you did it right. There's a flash or lights in the cycle, like Simon's going to do.
Yeah, but the point is that when you get it right, it just gives you a harder puzzle. It just gives you one extra light on the thing. Sadly, the I Ching tool doesn't come with the doesn't come in our collection. That is one of the few components we're not given for this part. Oh, did I mention that? I may not have mentioned how the custom LCDs, which we're not using for this game, work. I can't actually put one on the board. We've got no space for it. But you essentially draw a Pung file, and it turns that into your custom LCD screen. We do have. Oh, that's far too big. This thing which can display a number, which I was thinking we might use for the score, but sadly we don't have enough space for it.
It is ridiculously enormous.
So you'll just have to. Well, you can keep track of what AC has in that processor. Right. Anyway, so that now blanks the lights correctly. That then does that. So that's the test that tests whether we've got things right. So I suppose we could go. Like that, and then if we get things wrong, then it crashes. It's kind of an error signal. At least it should crash because it's just gone into a tight loop there. Yes, but curiously, time hasn't actually stopped. I'd have expected a part not sleeping error. Oh well, it's not very helpful to crash the program whenever you get the answer wrong. Yes. Well, I mean, I don't know what it'll. I'm just not going to bother coding for the case where you've managed to get all 33 answers right. At least not until we've proved that the. Actually, if we just have that go.
You could test that case where I remember going originally. I think you read all the time or something. So you could test it.
Oh, well, that should be. Sorry, reset that. Right. Then let's get something wrong. Yay! It's not a nice noise. But it now goes beep if you get it wrong. Doesn't do anything useful if you get it right, but it goes beep if you get it wrong.
Okay.
What?
I think okay.
But we've run out of space in the program again. So let's just prove that it does nothing useful if you get it right. And then it just keeps reading through the RAM of things you now haven't seen yet. Right. So our problem is that we really haven't got any space for any more program there, and it doesn't do everything we need. So that suggests to me that we want something silly like one processor whose job it is to play out the lights, and another job a processor whose job it is to read back the button presses and signal failure. But so let's imagine, so the thing is that then those processors can't both be wired to the RAM. So we need one processor whose job it is to do all of the reading from the RAM. And then the idea would be that let's see, what have we got here? We've got one instruction of working out what we're doing. Then we reset the RAM pointer. We play things out with one sleep instruction in between. We turn off the lights and reset the RAM pointer again, and then we read things in. So what the thing that talks to the RAM does, or could be thought of as doing, is playing out some number of things to one processor and then some number to the other, but it has to then know what number to play out, and only the success or failure, the processor that knows about success or failure, can work out how many. But maybe that's for the best, because then it makes it somebody else's problem to think about the number of so we could arrange that we have something that you throw it a number and it then gives you back that many entries from the RAM over XBus. Oh, except that if it's a processor, it has to sleep in all sorts of weird and unhelpful fashions. I mean, I was thinking we could move that sleep down into this processor, but that doesn't help us very much because we then just have to replace it with something like an SLX to wait for this processor to signal, and that's the same amount of stuff. This is surprisingly twiddly. And yes, the fact that XBus is all synchronous, and you can't, it's quite hard to make something that behaves like a RAM in this. In that what you want is sleep until we get an XBus read request, but you can't do that, I think. Yes, but I have to work out how I'm going to split things into two separate processors. And that's quite hard because I need... Because... I mean, can we do it just with... I mean, I suppose this one is mostly right. So what if we say everything up to there, i.e. the playout section, stays precisely as it is, but then we have something else that does the input checking. So this processor obviously then has to signal what the inputs that we're expecting are. But that ends up being the same number of instructions. All we do is we change that teak to something else. So that doesn't actually help us with anything. What's that mov null x3 doing? So that's the thing that tells the input processor to start accepting input. Or rather to start sending things. Well, what happens if we temporarily remove that bit? What label's not defined? Oh, jump Y there. You're quite right. Now, I need to actually look at this now because it does something different. Blah, 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 blah. Well, that's a nice easy sequence. So that still works as expected. I think the question is what happens... Yeah, okay, we wedge the whole thing solid if we press a button during the play out in that state. Whereas if I put those extra instructions back in, then the buttons are ignored. Okay. Oh yes, that was because I think it had finished playing all of the.
Do you want to?
Yes, please. I will probably forget it.
Okay, well, we can try to remind you
Thank you.
today rather than tomorrow.
Yeah, that would be good. So we can save one instruction by not bothering to tell this processor when we're ready for it to send us the button presses. And that makes the system slightly more fragile, slightly lower pitched, I think, but only very slightly. The thing is, we actually need quite a lot more instructions than that, so that's not going to help us much. So our big problem is all to do with the synchronous nature of XBus, I think. Or maybe we... Ew, no, that would be horrible. So how about... this processor alternately, this is requiring careful thought, alternately emits sequences of numbers, but if it emits them down two different XBus ports. Ooh, but we can't. Ooh, that's horrible, Ben. So the problem is at the moment we have to have two loops in here, one of which reads the RAM in sequence and sends it to the lights, and the other one of which reads the RAM in sequence and sends it to the and compares it against the input from the buttons. And it's hard to fit those two loops into the amount of program space we've got available. But what if we could turn it into one loop? The problem is that it has to send it has to deal with two different XBus ports, and even if we do like that comparison on a different processor, so it turns it into a send in both directions, it still has to deal with two XBus ports. But I bet you can have two readers on the same XBus port, as long as they don't both try to read simultaneously. So can we actually thus have a single loop here that just does play out numbers from the RAM until we reach N, where N is something we just received over XBus, and then repeat. And then we have one processor whose job it is to display those, and another processor whose job it is to interpret those and compare them against the button and tell us how many RAM cells we use next time based on whether the user just won n+1 or lost 1. Right. Maybe it'll work. Of course, the alternative and even sillier approach would be to do something involving a simple output and recoding everything to have numbers 100 or less. But let's not try to do that. So the idea here is possibly we can boil this one down to an MC4000X. And possibly we can make the others into MC4000Xs. So we start with the playout processor, which essentially does something like mov x0. Maybe we can actually fit the playout processor into there, because we've got a bit of space in that processor. But let's just look at this. Mov x0 x. Hang on. So this is the one that starts things. So it starts with that. But then it needs to know when to stop. Though actually that's easy, because that's when we get a 0. Is that sensible? And then if we have received 0, we wait for a different signal. And then wait for that to become, and then go back to the start. So the problem with that is that this processor will then crash waiting for this one to read from X0 for the second light. So then we have to have this one. In order for that to work, this one has to send some signal up X0 to say, I'm ready, please send me some more data, so that this one can be in it. Why on earth does SLX not allow you to wait for writability? Stupid design. Just going to confirm it doesn't. Sleep until data is available to be read on the X bus pin specified by the operand. But if it could sleep waiting for something to be writable, that would be so much easier. Because I want this one essentially sleep until. So that would then. Right, so that would then work and do what we want. So if we were to. Drop that in there. That extra mov 0, it's not very inconvenient. We can always send a 0 to the reading processor as well. So then all that changes. Oh gods, SLX then means you have to read a thing. So that actually consumes one more instruction. And actually this needs to be slightly further out because we're planning to wire that XBus port into two things. So
Beep, beep.
I'm not sure this is going to work. But let's clear out some of this lot because I essentially want to redesign it anyway. So the idea here is that instead this goes wait for a signal on X2, read it.
I'm thinking about your gates. I think I like it because I've got a technique that implemented that seems to make more sense. Right? Which is that in order to move a robot, you tentatively imagine moving along the next square. If there's something, if it tracks in the way, if there's something, if there's a robot in the way, then you tend to move that.
So I think
Until either you find that you've got no remaining overlaps, or something's becoming possible, so there's words. And in the case where I think there's influence, in the case where it goes through a gate and comes back down to something that's already there, it will push whatever is at the new rotation, or whatever is now at the rotation it's trying to move into. I think the behaviour you asked for will just work. But also, this works in a much more obvious case that clearly, which is when you have two gates facing each other and a full row of robots and one of them moves that way. Yeah. You obviously want to cycle around, this way it work. Whereas a lot of other implementation techniques would go, but there's a solid line of robots until it's locked.
what's happening there then?
Tight loop or something. So I think I'm prepared to believe that.
Of course, I got a picture of the picture from earlier on, which I think was A, B, C, D, or something like that, where there's a different colour gate to the right of B, which I don't know, it comes out above B or something. And then,
Why is this
so what if you had
jamming then?
robots in a square like that?
So that one,
Let's say A, B, C, D, and you've got a blue gate that's here and here, and a yellow gate that's here, here, and a green
that
gate
reads
that's
from
here,
there, then that's in MOV
and a green gate that's
X
here.
naught AC. So that immediately gets fetched down there.
Then we'll go around and check.
That then gets sent out there, which is what we expect.
Would they have been?
Oh, that loop's far too tight.
Yes. It's an interesting question whether we're in a place where the positioning of that. Yes, you might have to put code or something.
Right. So that now correctly does some things, but it doesn't. It needs to do something here, which would be more. Which is infuriatingly all those instructions again.
Well, not just what you're trying to avoid.
Yes. Plus, that doesn't seem to work. Oh, probably because it everything immediately jumps back to the top again. Okay, why did that not blank the LEDs at the end? because that says MOVX naught x2. Yes, right. Okay, that's fairly obvious. Right. So that behaves itself, but that then wants to do that. So then what this then does is having... So I think that means that processor is now correct, and is, I think, complete. But then we want to... and this we can probably integrate some more of these processors together with some effort. We don't actually want that up there. We're going to want to wire. If we're going to need that, it'll be wired into the other processor anyway. Which incidentally might mean we need an MC4000 for it. So then this one is the one that does the hard work and might actually need to be bigger. So right at the start, and indeed at the start of each round, it needs to signal the number of light flashes it wants. Now this is going to need a big processor. This is actually the brains of the outfit. We want to move it to ACK? Yes, we probably do. What? Me carefully adjusting the sleep so things happen in the right order? Never. So then the idea of that is that at startup, that one initializes the accumulator. Obviously, then that one and then everything else works as we previously coded it. So now, after signalling how long we want, then this one should wait for playout to complete. So then we can test that. So that processor should then stick in there. Yeah, but okay, it'll work a bit better if I actually reintroduce the code to do that. Well, that's waiting for that. Well, we need that. This surely needs to get signalled first. What? Why is that firing? Stuff happens over there for a bit. Don't know how far we are through this sleep, annoyingly. Yes. And it says, I'm ready for the next number. All right, and then, of course, yes, after the first light, we then end up there. So, right, so that's working correctly. Good. There are 4 lights.
That's what did very start of yesterday. Of last week's session.
Right. So, so that is working correctly. I was just confused by the fact that, of course, we start at 1. Right. So, I mean, obviously, it would be a bit trivial to give someone a 0 light sequence and ask them to imitate it.
I already have. I didn't even notice.
Yes. Right. So that bit's working fine. So then, this one is then sleeping on us saying, on this processor saying it's ready. So then we do, then we essentially repeatedly ask for a number, get a number, check if it's 0. If it's not 0, check if it's, wait for a button press and check if it's that button press. Except that I think,
It is. Sure, we go back to the beginning.
yes, so, well, hang on, yes. So if it is 0, the user has obviously pressed all the buttons correctly. So then we go add 1 and jump back to the start. Possibly we don't need, no, actually add 1, let's hope that we don't need to do any more thinking. And no, that probably won't work.
You can't write in the word jump starter. That's quite wrong. Also, you can't jump back to X because that would reset actually wrong.
Yeah, okay, shall we move X? Oh, okay, let's put Y there.
So this is a start jump.
Otherwise, did they press the correct button? If they did not press the correct button, I mean, in the extreme case, just jump to X and reset the counter to 1 again. Don't bother telling them they failed. They'll be able to tell shortly.
Also, you can read off the current state of your current state of awesomeness from ACK of that process.
Yes, indeed. And then finally, in the case where we haven't reached the end and nothing else has happened, we jump to L. So I think this is wrong in that...
Well, hang on. You can X is at the start, so you don't need to jump X.
Yes. We just actually need a plus jump L somewhere. Well, I'm not... Hang on. I've got...
Hang on. For a start, that second tech doesn't have to have marks because you've already diverged control. So then you can do a plus jump right sort of instruction, and it doesn't get confusing.
yes, which is all kind of weird because our failure is fall through the bottom of the program. Right, so this is. I think this is wrong because I think surely we have to have an SLX somewhere. That's actually quite simple, isn't it? We need to have an SLX X1 there in order to sleep until the user presses a button. Right, is this correct then? No. Why the hell is there 100 in that? That's blatantly wrong.
That's very
Oh no, because we're using ACK for two things, we idiots. We're using ACK as a temporary storage so that we can test how far we're getting through the sequence. We obviously can't use it for that and as a counter. Right. Happily, we've got a spare register. Damn it, I didn't see which light lit up. Well, let's press a
I
button.
didn't see any like that.
You can read it out of the RAM.
Hush. Right, that didn't work quite right. Why is pressing buttons not doing anything? Because that's waiting for a signal to say that it should enable reading. Right, yes. It never disables reading, does it? I may have to turn off that feature anyway and just allow it to crash in those circumstances. Actually, let's turn off that feature for now. And just say it'll probably crash if you press a button at the wrong moment. Right. Okay, now what? That's still waiting for X1. So it didn't get... Okay, so let's just check this. That gets to there. So that should... So this one is now waiting to be have a number requested, but it looks like it's looped back to the wrong place. Yes, you've got a jump L there that's blatantly wrong. Surely, if that's the end of the thing, we need to go back to the start to reread the accumulate, to reread the number, which in turn means that MOV AC X3 may be a bit dangerous, or rather we then wait for that to signal, then why are we moving null to X3 there? We first need to do MOV AC X3 again in order to reset the counter. Is that right? So that's reset itself, has it? No. No, I think I need to pay slightly more attention to this. So. Wait for that light to go out. So that then sends the turn off light signal. That's now waiting for the new count, which will be the same as the previous count, except that which comes there. Right, then that resets that pointer. Then that one says it's ready and therefore sends an indication of what we want. We're not ready for that, and therefore we wait for a button press. Right, good. That is then in its scan loop. And that's working correctly. So then you press a button. Now really I want to drop back into single stepping. while holding the button down. There's probably a key for this. So that's currently in an SLX. When it comes out of that SLX, it will test the signal it gets against X1 and either jump back to L or the beginning of the program. Decides to jump back to the beginning of the program. Why is it testing ACK against X1? That's wrong, because I pressed the correct button there, because that should be testing DAT against X1. I mean, I don't think that actually helps. Because it does just leave us crashed there. So part of the problem is that this should then drop back into an SLX somewhere, waiting for its next request for... How does this... Does that one just sit there all the time? It does. Oh, yes. So it does actually read continuously. Okay, that's fine then. So that one is then waiting for a button, and I don't know which is the correct one anymore. And then it ends up sitting, waiting for the signal to say that this one is ready again. This one, meanwhile, is waiting for a signal to say that that one has finished. Right. So that's what our problem is. Those two have deadlocked because they don't know whose turn it is to do something. And we've run out of instructions again. Because this one now actually needs a mov null x0 in order to essentially hand the token back to this processor.
Why do you need to start that with a slip one?
Because it starts by writing...
No, it doesn't. It starts by sleeping on... Oh, yes, no, sorry.
Starts by writing to x3, and this processor needs to have... This processor is in turn waiting for this one to write the first entry into the RAM.
Sorry, I didn't see the X3. However, it starts with some moves in SLX, but of course this is Intel-style moves that can do anything.
Yes, and in particular, that move will block on x3 being readable, which it will only become at that instruction. Now, strictly, of course, that instruction can be moved before the sleep.
Oh, hold on. If it's only block on X3 being readable, why do you need to sleep before it?
Because blocks don't sleep. We have two different kinds of time in this rather stupid way. So you essentially can't write to XBus for more than a few milliseconds before something explodes. The XBus transceivers are very fragile, you see. But actually, that instruction can go there. And that means we can remove that sleep. Perfectly fine for initialization instructions to happen not at the start of the program. And that then means we've got one slot free, which ends up being... annoyingly, it wants to happen, though, at either that jump Y or that jump L, or the fall off the end of the program. But maybe we can do it here and rotate the program in this one to expect one signal to come in. So we could, the idea then is we go that in order to signal that this to this processor that it has the token, which means that it starts without the token, which then means we need a bunch of stuff at the top of the program, but all the conditions are wrong then. It needs those two instructions. Yeah, I may have, and takes up more space. So maybe I actually have to go up to a big processor for this one just to get those, just to be able to add in a jump to avoid the mess So that's slip 2. I'm now wondering if we can kill that too. Because now, if we're going to stick an SLX up there, so the problem is, of course, that that will write to there too early otherwise. But, well, tiny microcontrollers come with only a small amount of built-in ROM. But the limit on number of instructions in the real world is more like 1,000 than 7. So I'm trying to work out if I can kill that sleep. But that one...
Murder that sleep.
Thank you, yes. But the thing is that one is essentially needed to get us past this sleep up to that SLX. Let's have some tea while I ponder. I mean, I can... Maybe we should just make this another expensive processor.
I did wonder, you've got all that space below this.
Yes, but rather entertainingly, I actually need to put it upwards. Oh God, all the pins are in the wrong places. Because there, that P1 doesn't line up correctly. Oh, is the answer that we actually move the input processor down one? No. Does Control A does select everything. Good. So yes, I think the answer actually turns out to be that we move that down one, and then we can wire those together, and then we've got the same thing, but with a bit more oomph behind it. So what we end up wanting is for this one. I think we'll just go for making this a slightly different loop. So we put this processor starts with the token. What? Why can I not copy and paste those up to the top? Oops. Is it because I have to... better. Right. So this one starts with the token, starts without the token, and therefore the first thing it has to do is to get the token. Then it signals to this processor that it's ready, does various stuff, and as its final move gives away the token. Well, that just crashes horribly, right. Why is that stopped? Because that's trying to give away the token, and it can't give away the token yet. Because this thing... Okay, this one needs to take the token, then sleep 2, because you're not allowed to sleep other than waiting for the token when you don't yet have the token. Right, that's better. It'd be nice if it used one of the other lights.
Is the RNG going 9? 9.
It is, in fact, going. I've just looked at the table. Right, well, it seems to work, but it'd be nice if it lit up a different light occasionally. Yeah, I know. It was eventually going to be green. Right, so I should test getting it wrong, I suppose. Oh, well, then it doesn't work. Still, it works fine as long as you keep playing it correctly. So, what's meant to happen when you get something wrong? It's meant to be pretty much the same as far as everything is concerned, apart from this processor. Because this one should just find it only emits one light rather than n+1. So what happened then? So it then jams sleeping on waiting to get the token back. And that thing is allegedly jammed on sending a signal up to there. So that's waiting for the token. What's going on then? I don't understand. Right. Especially given everything else seemed to work. So then at that point, this one is waiting for me to press a button as expected. So what's it going to do? I think I may just need to work this out in my head. So it's then going to successfully do that teak. That will turn out to be not equal, so it will fall all the way through to the top of the program. So at this point it still holds the right process, the input processor still holds the token. It then
The difference between jumping to the top and jumping to L is that in both cases you squirt something out of X3, but in only one case do you also signal out of X6.
But the thing is, yes, but jumping to the top, the point is that the thing that we're deciding between here,
Is X and Y, not X and Y.
yes, is between X and Y, in that we would have otherwise fallen. We jump to L because we need to read another button press. In the case where we know that we don't need to read another button press, do we have the problem that we have to signal back up to this thing partway through reading that it needs to reset? Oh gods, yes. The problem is that this one expects to be always able to play out a full sequence. But the thing is, you can lose the game partway through a sequence. Curses. Yes, so that's where we're going wrong, is that this processor always expects to be able to play out the full sequence, and if it's not going to, then it needs to know. So it expects to get a signal every time someone's about to read from it, and currently it does nothing with the result of that. Um, so it could do something if it gets in a surprise non-zero there, but the problem is so that goes up to there. It then signals out of X3 with ACK, which is interesting because this thing, of course, will at that point, if we're mid-sequence, be at one of those things reading from X2. So we could have that. Dat isn't used in this processor yet, is it? No. So we could perfectly well have those two read into DAT. We've got 3 instructions left. Curses. That's not quite enough to do a compare and maybe branch. But maybe we don't need a branch. Because if we could have this just get that signal problem is what we have read there is the new value of ACK, and we thus need to copy it into ACK and yeah, the having 2 copies of the loop is biting me again, even though one of the copies of the loop only writes out 0. So I think we need to fix that so that we really do only have 2 copies of the loop, even if it makes things a bit more complicated. Even if it makes that 1 copy of the loop more complicated. So what it does at the moment is teak x1 ACK, i.e. have we advanced far enough that we need to end the sequence, and then if we have, if we haven't, we jump back to the top, otherwise we omit one more element of the sequence. So what we want to do instead is take one more loop around this cycle, one more cycle around this loop, move that test to there, and then say if we have reached the end of the cycle, if we have not yet reached the end of the cycle, copy out from RAM. If we have reached the end of the cycle, copy out from 0. That's not quite right, is it? Because we also need that jump L to still be there. And if we have not reached the end of the cycle, jump back to L. So I think that's now got us down to 1 version of the loop, which means if we want the loop more complicated, we've got more space to do it. Let's just test that. So last time it worked as long as your play was correct. And it looks like it still does. Good. Right. So that still works. And we've now got lots of space in this processor. And more importantly, only 1 readout loop. In that every time we want to send anything, we pass through this sequence of instructions. So we could then make this read into DAT instead. That should make no difference to how the code works, except that DAT ends up repeatedly being overwritten with zeros. Right, good. So now we can do is DAT 0 if it is not 0, then it is a new value for ACK. So we should then we have been terminated mid-sequence. So we want to move it to ACK and jump to, well, essentially the top of actually to the third element of the program there to restart. Right, so that should, for the most part, behave exactly the same. If we play with correct play, it should still work. It does. It works!
So what just changing that last thing did because you'd say it worked? It seemed to be working-ish before.
It worked fine originally if you played correctly.
Right.
But the problem was that when you make a mistake, the system has to jump out of the middle of a sequence of lights and go back to the start. And the mechanism for doing that, well, I hadn't written it, basically.
I thought they used to go beep. Is that not so different?
It would go beep and then crash.
Ah, okay.
The beeper has been removed.
Yeah, I can probably, it would go beep, but then it didn't. But essentially, it couldn't go any further. It wouldn't restart the game. Now the only indication that you failed is that it goes back to showing you one light rather than several, and various registers drop back to 0. So yes, I kind of now wonder if we've got anywhere we can put in. Actually, we can totally put in a failure indicator, because we've got a spare P and the gen instruction. And 2 spare instruction slots on that CPU. And we know you've had a failure because you passed through this bit of code here. That wasn't meant to be that long a beep. Something's crashed there.
10 seconds?
No, it means the same amount of time as each of the lights lights up for.
Right.
Which is more like 1 second.
Okay.
So there's something that's expecting us, that's probably writing to an XBus port that we're meant to be waiting for. We then, something's waiting for us on X1. Oh, that's the RAM. And then we do an SLX. Right, yes, some other processor has already signalled us that it wants we have to insert a slip somewhere. Curse is, we haven't quite got into a position where we can do this. Because the problem is that we then fall through to that MOV X. We fall through to, or rather we don't fall through to that SLUX X2, but this processor has already started signalling us that it wants us to send the next sequence of lights. This one, of course, has some spare time. So we could probably solve that problem by No, I don't want to do that. I was going to unconditionalize that sleep, but that's the wrong sleep to unconditionalize. What we would have to do is add an extra sleep there. Which is slightly silly after we've carefully conditionalised that slip 10. That didn't work like I was expecting it to work. No, because that slip 10 wants to be on the other side of the loop label. That's better. It adds a short pause before each sequence of lights, but that's kind of good because it gives you a chance to wake up. You now get a small pause there, and then we get the next sequence. But I think that's actually an improvement.
Because the repetition has taken the first slide, I did picture Nicholas Parsons doing that as well thing. Which is very easy to do.
Yes, that's definitely a thing that makes no sense.
It was the 80s, a time when you could have a children's programme at the game show where the host hit the children on the head with a hammer. You wouldn't get that these days.
It's quite a spongy hammer.
It's still a hammer. You know, if you threatened to shoot them with a foam gun, that probably wouldn't have gone very well.
And nobody made the children dress up like males.
Oh, that's true.
But then,
Well,
well,
shall we sniff it over you?
Poor top right light. I don't trust this random number generator.
it's a feature of random number generators is that they don't look random.
Did I just get something wrong and has it crashed? No, I need to press another button, don't I? Yes. But you can see the circuits flashing.
Yeah.
No, I'm actually playing this properly. But it's giving me a very easy sequence. Oh, I got it wrong. Right.
So now what happens? Does it start again? Or
Then it flashes. Then it goes back to the start and plays you one light,
right.
as it should.
So how random was that?
It was going to eventually hit the fourth light there.
So how can you tell that I can't read that line?
So these lines go 1, 110, 111, 110, 1, 110, 1, 10, 109.
109.
109 indicates that light. There's a reason.
Okay.
It's a perfectly sensible number. The 9 is the difference between 1 and 10.
Okay. Obviously. No bottom R again.
Because you want to have at least one primary encoding.
But yes, I think we now have a game that works.
Can you upload or submit this somewhere or save it?
I can't remember.
You basically would lose it.
Take a screenshot.
A screenshot would of course be sufficient.
There is a save.
Because of course you have an entire video stream of this one.
That too.
That's true, we've already taken a screenshot.
Lots of screenshots. There is it does actually. The entire thing is encoded in a readable text file. All your designs. Well, one text file per design. Each of those files in the file manager is in the outside of this is just a text file that you can extract and read.
This low budget company has managed to use a CAD tool that supports open standards and doesn't pay for its low price with massive locking.
Apparently so. Well, I mean, to be fair, that file is kind of outside of the game. Right. So I think now I can say I have completed the objective.
Definitely.
There's no way for us to verify this, so we're trusting you. Keep holding. You promise you really made a game? I really made a game.
We've got evidence and everything.
Carl says, fine work there. Well, I suppose it's my turn now. What should we make a game about? Reply from Zhang-Ji, electrical engineering. Ha ha, that would be a terrible game.
I must admit that because of the small text, I momentarily misread that as electoral engineering. Which I'm sure this company will get to soon.
So yes, while the people on the stream can't see this, where is it stored? Is one of those that's obviously prototyping things. Prototyping area.
Ooh.
So there is the definition of that thing, which mostly is a bunch of locations, track layout. I don't quite know how that works, but it's clearly a drawing of the traces and
So
the contents of the
that's
code.
those are clearly middles with a bitmap for up, down, left and right.
Aha, right, yes. Yes.
Because that's how I do it, and because I did, in fact, in net.
Yes. So yes, thus there is a text file that just contains the design that you can send to everyone else. Right. Well, that was a great success, in a sense. So we have...
That's what you should have put in the spare area. A little post-it note saying huge success.
Have I got enough room for a post-it note? Oh, there's a post-it note size space there. Yes, okay. There we are. I mean, there's also a small space there, but
It's a success.
So, how can you optimise this?
so that thing takes XBus inputs, so it's a lot harder to drive because we don't have much spare by way of XBus. Not that we can conveniently get at anyway. Okay, well that'll do. So yes, now the text file contains at the bottom somewhere. How does a note appear? Is that chip type note? Chip type note code huge success. Right. Should we do the other two projects that I was kind of going to do before we left for the? Yeah, pretty much. What time is it? It's only 10:30. Right. Yeah, but it doesn't mean I want to stay up far too late. So we have one of these artisanal real-time clock chips, where someone is blatantly parodying Dallas Semiconductor. Not that they claim to be an artisanal thing, but the bit where you can identify which semiconductor company they're referencing in their data sheets is kind of cute. Anyway, so time, which is actually the signal from this clock chip, is a simple input providing the current time. Sensor is an input connected to an infrared sensor. Alarm is an output connected to an alarm. When the current time equals the on time, the device should be armed. When the current time equals the off time, the device should be disarmed. Whenever the device is armed and the sensor reads at or above a value of 20, the alarm output should be active. And we have XBus inputs that tell us the on time and the off time. So this is one of those mildly infuriating things where we have three simple connections, but notably two of them are actually... two of them are not Booleans. One of them is a Boolean, the alarm output. So we could go for a large processor. We could go for a large processor and a DX300 or two small processors. Probably. Let's go for two small processors. Yeah, because that's really simple then, isn't it? So we could do that, and then this thing will simply go. Um,
If you draw a vertex for every legal position of the discs, and vertex is 50% legal difference, and then you rearrange it with a straight plane, you discover it looks quite Serdinsky triangle. With the three main triangles corresponding to which peg the biggest disc is at the base of, because there's only one move that can get you between them, which is why you clear everything else out of the vertex. And then recursively, I mean, the actual coordinates are a bit strange because everything you shrink down by the thing. You swap which way around the triangle is until the points. Yeah. But there's a reasonable coordinate system. And so the quickest move, of course, from one corner of this triangle to the other.
right, so that. Let's just wire this up badly.
Hamilton that will go from one to the other, visiting every other vertex exactly once on the way.
Correctly arms and disarms, that being the arming output.
No, it's easy. Obviously you're going to visit the top triangle, so you have to traverse the two links, and then you look at
Hang
each
on.
triangle and you go,
That doesn't quite work. Now this one needs three simple connections anyway.
those links, and it looks like a piano spacefully curved on the center of the triangle. That would be
So if we're going to have to do that, sod it, let's use one big processor instead of two little ones then.
one big person actually costs doesn't
Yes. I mean, I thought that it was a choice of two little processors or one big processor and one I/O expander, but then I tried to do it with two little processors and found I needed an I/O expander anyway. So I'm doubtless doing this unnecessarily inefficiently, but at or above 20. Oops. I missed a sloop somewhere. Yes, I have. I've lost track of. No, I've missed the inner loop in the second loop entirely. What? Why have you jammed there? You appear to have jammed in a slip 1. Don't think that should happen. Right, so what I'm making here is a thing which has... It keeps doing that. Which has a real-time... Which has a real-time clock that just counts upwards as a simple input. And if we have passed the on time, but not passed... When we pass the on time, we start looking for sensor to be greater than 20, and while sensor is greater than 20, we signal out of the alarm output. When we reach the off time, we stop doing that again. which I have incidentally realised there's a bug with. Hang on. Why, oh, why, oh, why, oh, why am I trying to do this all in hardware? Would it not be simpler to try to do it in software and just have an AND gate somewhere? Because then I can just make this 2 processors. But yeah, throw the whole lot away, build a new one. There's a much more sensible way to design this. Where's an AND gate? That's not AND, that's AND. But yes, we could do it in software, but it's going to be much simpler to do it like this. This one, yes, this is the infrared sensor. Yes, it's as you say, burglar alarm, thing for detecting anything criminal that might emit heat. Lots of things that I think Wu Li's opinion is that pretty much all criminal activities emit heat. Right, so then we just need one processor that will... This is actually the program I first wrote for this processor before I redesigned it. So this one will just go if P0 is
Freakishly tight.
actually we can make it tighter.
Oh, yes, that's true.
And the nice thing is that we've still got that port conveniently available. See, this kind of thing is why printed circuit board design is fun. Judson tries to think of an endothermic crime. So check if we are at the on time. If we are not, wait a bit and try again. If we are at the on time, then say that we're at the on time. Check if we are at the off time. If we are not, sleep. Go round and check again. So that this bit just ensures that this signal here is true if and only if we are between the on time and the off time. This processor is even simpler. And goes like that. And this saves an awful lot of complexity by just having 2 processors that do all the work.
Well, you didn't get remotely the expected production cost.
No. No one builds it with... No one uses logic gates in this game. Like this is the...
I mean, in the production cost, there are 2 sort of...
Yeah, there are 2 spikes, but by virtue of using a bizarre chip, I've ended up with a number that isn't any of the expected ones. I can't remember how much. It stopped hiding them from me now. Yes, they cost 1 yuan. There's nothing else that costs 1 yuan. So Judson says nuclear synthesis of elements heavier than nickel in stellar cores.
Doesn't that cost 1 yuan?
No. Anyway, right. Just letting you know that your design for the infrared sensor component was well received by our partners. I've read this one before, which means I have solved this problem before with a less stupid design in a previous playthrough. No, I didn't get histograms for the game, sorry. It would be kind of silly, though, given the nature of the challenge.
Fun though to see how inefficient everyone's other games are, or how much we put into them.
I'm sure there are forums. Design for the infrared sensor component was well received by our partners and is set to be integrated into a number of products currently under development by various defence and security firms. Obviously, here our performance here opens the door to more jobs of this nature, so thank you for contributing to Longtang's future. And Carl, hang on, we're becoming a defence supplier? Yes, it's not all cheese.
Oh, this is the
Yes. We have a deal to create a highly portable infrared targeting device that automatically switches emitter modes based on range. Mounted add-on for any type of carbine weapon, it has the potential to do very well across government and law enforcement agencies, which Carl refuses to work on. But, well, it's a challenge. So radar out is a simple input connected to a miniature radar unit that indicates when it fires a radar ping. Ping! Radar in is a simple input connected to a miniature radar unit that indicates when it receives a radar ping. Laser is a simple output connected to a variable intensity infrared aiming laser. Flood 20 and Flood 60 are simple outputs connected to infrared flood illuminators. Measure the delay between the start of a radar out pulse. Hang on, but you're going to have this is in tenths of a second. This is obviously silly. Surely it must be some kind of ultrasonic sonar rather than radar. And even then, and the start of the radar impulse that follows it determine the radar range. Control laser flood 20 and flood 60 as specified in the carbine target illuminator range diagram, which can be found in the manual. Radar ranges 1 to 2 time units, laser 0%, 60%, 60 degree flood on, 3 to 4 time units, laser at 50%, 20 degree flood on, 5 to 6 time units, laser at 100%, neither flood on. So in particular, that means that we need that to be an analog output, but those two can be digital, and technically those two can be digital. So essentially, at the moment when we receive the second, we receive the radar impulse, we change what the output does. So essentially, we want something that listens for radar out, then counts until it receives radar in, and once it receives radar in, updates the 3 outputs accordingly. So yeah, that doesn't look like it's too awkward. Actually, cheesier approach. We know that we always get a radar out pulse followed by a radar in pulse. So those can be the same input. Where's our OR gate gone? There we are. Right. That's now boiled that down to a single input, which is obviously cheaper.
But then individual cases have got assigned a number, and now when people say AC, you get specific software.
So then we can wire that to there. We probably don't actually need a big processor, but let's... Right, and then we do something like we want to wait for actually, let's just start by taking the default value being 60 UE flood on, so that's, and then say if it's greater than 2, this is going to be slightly too much code, isn't it? And we're going to have to optimize something. Because then we then end up wanting to do, yes, and then we run out of space. But that wasn't how I was expecting it to fail. So that, why did that do that then? Oh, because we've accidentally used a NOR gate and not an OR gate. Right, let's try that instead. Right, okay, so that did something right at least, in that after receiving the first ping, it does set things up correctly. But the problem is that, so is there some cunning way that we can get the right answer in fewer instructions, or get the right output in fewer instructions? So our input is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. Should probably check whether it actually is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. I presume that's meant to be 1. And then that's 3. So I think it's because that's different from that. So I think that's 1 and that's 3 and so forth. Because you can't, of course, get 0. So let's just check that that's what we actually end up with in the counter. Right, yes. So the laser is 50 times the number divided, take the accumulator, divide by 2, which we can slightly surprisingly do in 2 instructions, and then multiply by 50. But the awkward thing is that the floods are... Oh, can we make those? No. So, like, if we redo this, I kind of suspect I can do the loops a bit more elegantly. We could go mul 5 digit get 1, which is divide by 2. So I think that should then get the laser output correct in all cases. Yes, right.
What about the laser picture?
Hmm?
Picture is rotten.
Yes, which shows you what your design is doing. You can see it's not turning on the floodlights, but it is setting the laser brightness correctly. Now, of course, what we could do is just have something that reads the laser brightness and converts that into the correct floodlighting brightness, which, when we've only got one instruction to do anything else with, is kind of tempting. Now wondering if there's some cleverer way. So the laser is 0, 50 or 100. So we know that the logic threshold is 50, though I don't know quite which side of 50 it is. Which would mean that a logic gate could convert that into a 0 or 100 for each of the floodlights. But it wouldn't correctly select which floodlight. Of course, the interesting thing with this design is that we no longer use the condition codes down here. If we can keep not using the condition codes, which we can... No, we can't. Maybe we can. Maybe we can do this with enough logic gates. We can... So if we do this, and then also mov ac x2, because I noticed that the number we're dealing with is 0, 50 or 100. In other words, it has different non-zero digits in the two cases. So if we just adjust precisely what we're wiring up here, this will obviously be wrong, but it'll be interestingly wrong.
I'm not sure I appreciate interestingly wrong with a gun, but
Hush.
although fair enough, that does look interestingly wrong.
Right. So now we just need to insert enough logic gates to make those answers correct. So Okay, the big problem is actually going to turn out to be that we don't end up initializing this thing in the right state, because it's meant to start in the state with everything turned off. Ah! Which is a fourth state that isn't in the manual. But I don't want it to start with everything turned off. That's not a permitted state. Which means that you can't generate the flood outputs from the laser output, because sometimes you have laser off and 60-degree flood on, and sometimes you have laser off and all floods off, because that's where the system starts up. Oh, what a mess.
So what are the actual outputs we're getting at the moment?
But the awkward thing is,
In fact, right at the start, there's a transition between laser off,
yes,
doing everything off, and laser off, flood on.
yes. So that means we can't just read the laser output and use that to tell us what the or read something that's the equivalent of the laser output. We do actually need to make some manipulation of it in order to get the in order to send something different out here. But it occurs to me that if we make all of these plus, then we can drop that slope and reuse that slope. So that still gets the laser brightnesses right, and we've gained one instruction at the expense of not being able to use conditionals for our mucking around. So now what we want is one instruction, ideally, that correctly takes our laser output and converts it into something with the right set of digits. So at the moment, the laser output is 0, 50 or 100, and we want to get out instead something where when we had 100 we have 0, so but where when we have 50 we have something with the low yes, okay. So if we do that at the moment, how badly wrong does that go? So that gets the flood 20 correct, but flood 60 is obviously wrong. So the question is, can we do something to fix flood 60 in that circumstance? So what we want is for us to have 100 as, when we get 100 as input, to output something that has a particular digit missing, but when we get 0, output something that has that digit present. And that leaves the middle digit more or less alone. So we can't, if we just add things, then we can't add something in a way that 0 will cause the low digit to change to become non-zero, but 100, unless we use, oh, can we saturate? No, but saturating will cause 100 to make the bottom digit non-zero, namely 9. So we'd have to saturate and then subtract. And we don't have 2 instructions to spare. Sorry, I'm now reading back through IRC logs. Right, so I slightly wonder if we can engage if what this thing does if you give it a negative number. Like, what happens if? Yeah, what happens if we do like sub 50? That's probably not the correct number, but so we wrote out. Hang on. Of course, it doesn't. It doesn't. It only says the supported inputs are things with ones and zeros in each digit. We've already determined that any non-zero digit value works, as it is equivalent to 1. So if we write out minus 50, it looks like it treats that as equivalent to 50. Right, I'm sure we can do this then. So so then if we take 100 and, well, what happens if we subtract 100 from it? Then 100 will become 0, which is what we want. 50 will become 50 minus 100 is minus 50, which means the middle bit is set, and 100 and 0 will become minus 100, which means the top bit is set. So I think then if we wire it up like, maybe not like that, maybe we need them the opposite way round. Yeah, okay. There we go. Ha! Not quite optimal in lines of code because frankly my code was flabby, but very cheap. Right. Well, it's only 11 o'clock. I will not lose any access to any puzzles. Well, that's partly because I've just completed all of them. I mean, custom specifications doesn't have a useful complete button. Create, I suppose, maybe if I create a custom specification, then it will appear here and then I can play around with it. But I feel that may be going a bit far. Not least because I can't show you the custom specifications because I have to edit them in a text editor. Right, well, shall we go to Avalon City then? Or, as you say, jump down the whole YN?
Does that mean, oh my god, the background is going to change?
Presumably, yes.
Dun, dun.
So what did I accomplish in Shenzhen? Engineering stories aren't like movie stories. I didn't find love or save the world or anything like that. But it brought me here. To the start of something new. Maybe something good or maybe a disaster. No, I did not find cheese. But no matter what the future holds, there's one thing I know. One thing I can always count on. I'm a damn good engineer. Well... Okay, the curious thing is there are still several pages of the bonus data.
Finish the game.
Well, maybe. Eek is saying hello. But like both the data sheets still contain that we haven't done anything with. A robotic sushi restaurant, a custom LED for for what appears to be a thorium salt reactor, and the mass production of a neural processing lattice. Yes, I think the thing is the previous Actronics game I played didn't actually have any credits. So I suspect we will find ourselves in Avalon shortly. Oh look, our operating system's booting again. Sector 203, Avalon City. Air quality good. So now I have my Long Teng email and my Avalon City email. I am pleased to welcome you to the independent Principality of Avalon City. Now that you are situated here, you are doubtless wondering how to begin contributing to our efforts. It may take you some time to getting used to, but the employee citizens of Avalon City are expected to organise themselves into project-based teams as needs arise. There are no pointless hierarchies or org charts here. Achieving the goals of our high-level development plans is the only thing that matters. Oh yes, but who sets the high-level development plans, eh? A key goal as we finish initial construction is to achieve complete self-sufficiency. The less we depend on imports, the less leverage other nations have with us, which will reduce the friction involved in gaining full diplomatic recognition. Research and development is already underway in key disciplines to support this objective, including marine science and biology, electronics and software, and manufacturing and construction. The people involved in these efforts will begin reaching out to you soon. Yes, so Pinkbees points out that in Space Chem, took submissions to the Journal of Reaction Engineering, which means I think there's a lot more post-plot game than plot game. TIS 100 has the same number of levels after you complete the game as before you complete it, or rather, has essentially an entire second part of the game in which things get much more interesting, if slightly less sinister. So Derek Paul, hiya. It was great to meet you at New Citizen Orientation. As I was explaining, the Ocean's Bounty Programme is an initiative to meet all of Avalon City's sustenance need using nothing but the sea around us, and we could really use your help. Turns out that feeding a city is as much about logistics as it is about biology. Sorry, Lisa. We have literal tons of ingredients and other materials to move back and forth between the cold storage area and the labs. So I've been... Thank you, yes. Jacob suggests that the crane in the background is called Derek Paul. So I've been planning out a robot that can handle that sort of thing. I've got the mechanical aspects down, but the control system is where you would come in. Once finished, there are probably applications all over the city, so this is a project with pretty big impact. Great to have you on board. Welcome to the team. I have to run, but it sounds like you've begun coordinating with Derek already. Thank you for your help. So, we have a radio receiver, a motor that outputs to a bidirectional motor, extend and grab, a simple output's connected to a robotic arm. When a data packet that begins with the value 1 is received, pick up the container on the loading pad and move it to the first available storage bay. Then return the robotic arm to the loading pad. The second value in the data packet is the container's ID number and will be used to retrieve it. When a data packet that begins with the value 2 is received, retrieve the container with the same ID number as the second value in the data packet and move the container to the loading pad. Consult the verification tab for information about motor, extend and grab timing. So the motor takes 0, 50 or 100 to tell it which way to move. And we have to keep a record of what is in each slot and find a free one and drop the thing into it. And then when we're asked to collect something, locate it in our records and pull it back out again. Right. So we're going to need some memory to store which ID is in each of the slots. It's kind of tempting to have... So my feeling here is... I don't know what my feeling is actually. We want... Because mostly we just go read, moving to the right as we go, and then move back again. And the slight trickiness is that we have to work out how far to move back. Let's assume that no container has ID number 0. Maybe we've moved the entire semiconductor fab for the company that makes these terrible microcontrollers out here with us. So F is our fetching routine. Though actually I suspect what we do, we end up having a thing that does much... Either we start off looking for a thing with 0, or we start off looking for a thing with the ID of the container. So we may actually be able to have the search routine be the same in both cases.
Since I think it'll be going off at 7:30.
But we do actually need to advance one first, don't we? The music seems to be different for most levels, yes.
Really very shanty like this.
No,
Tedious electronic of it.
right, that's not right. Oh, right, of course, we have to pick up the container first. So we are expected to... We have to go extend, turn on grab. Um, so when we're depositing something, we actually start with
I don't know why David said that. But,
right. So let's try this. So that correctly extends the arm. Then, of course, we have to actually engage grabbing motion. Right, and then we have the problem that we actually need to...
It's starting to look uncomfortably like work.
What?
This is starting to look uncomfortably like work. You're now doing ARM-based container management.
Yes. Sleep. So then we actually then have to include another slup one there. And then we fall off the bottom. Right, good. Though this is becoming also very big.
The mainframe plans to fall in love with its program. Oh yes, that's the way we go.
Right, so we've just only without accomplishing very much, reached the point where I think it will correctly transfer the container. Well, that didn't work right, because it's fallen through and done something terrible as a result, I think. Or have I just got confused about what I'm generating? Yes, that should be... No, what? P0 is the right one. It doesn't quite work correctly. Plus we've run out of program space. So this is going to have to be more complicated. As, you know, we might have thought. So it feels to me like we want something like an output processor that takes fairly simple commands and read and handles all of the tedious sequencing. So the commands could, so let's see, we could have, so the picking up and drop it, so we have essentially our sequences can be pick up, move right, drop, move left, or move right, pick up, move left, drop. So that suggests we have essentially 4 operations. Though it occurs to me that pick up and drop always have to alternate.
Don't. It's worse than the name suggests.
Um,
It can be terrifying.
It's more challenging than I expected.
so if you did, and this is where I wish I had the TIS-100 processors, which make microcoding easy. But we could have 4, if we had those 4 instructions as things that got fed into a processor that actually drives the outputs. I mean, it would probably essentially be this one. It would just lose some of its complexity. So it would essentially drive all of the timing. So it would basically go, wait for an input.
Just wondered if I was in a state. Like some kind of Sioux state. Ultimate.
Blah, blah, blah.
Facing up to
When we finish the command, we then send a signal back up.
who's top happens to look at it and so you get it.
So you don't have we have negate. No, that's not very helpful. I'm just thinking if we can easily do both pick up and drop as the same code sequence with some flag somewhere that indicates which one we're currently doing. What I want for that is a tiny divide by 2 counter, but we don't have one of those. What? Yeah, it's not the same as a divide by 2 counter. Because otherwise we could say something like we'll put it in ACK. Now we'll put it in DAT. No, we'll put it in ACK, excuse me. So then we could have the commands be something like, so then if it's positive there, if it's negative then we, if it's positive then we do motor to the right by that much. Um, this is probably going to be unnecessarily complicated. If it's negative, we negate it. I thought we had a negate instruction. Do we not have a negate instruction in this processor? We do have a not instruction. We don't have a negate instruction. Curses.
You have a constant multiply.
We do have multiply by a constant.
Yeah, can you minus one?
Yes, okay.
Okay, so the module student really, an idea where you haven't got to check that in any unless it's covered by minus one from x later on.
So then the only problem is that I'm running out, as usual, running out of space. Maybe that trying to do this with a single TCP was actually folly, and I should have done it with rather more instructions. So the kind of idea here was that we receive that our commands are a positive number to move to the right by that amount, a negative number to move to the left by that amount, and 0 for grab or ungrab. Sadly, we don't actually have any space for grab or ungrab. Plus, we have to work out where we store the fact that we're grabbing or ungrabbing. But on the other hand, we have a bunch of instructions that are duplicated between the move right and move left sections. So probably actually we do a teak ac 0, get ourselves out, get that case out of the way, and then we can have some instructions that we use only for moving right or moving left, and a lot of instructions that we use in the common case.
Yes, the small map shouldn't get moved.
Oh, it's too lovely.
So then we would obviously need some kind of a control processor.
You swap the two U's around. It's W.
Right. This absolutely has to be a big processor. We're going to need at least 2 registers. Actually, we're probably going to want a TCP there just so that we can throw away that number immediately. if we just go for, yeah. Problem is we've only got movement instructions, which means it won't even manage. Well, let's just try having it send some useless things. Oh, this needs to signal done, doesn't it?
Good night.
Right. Let's actually just have this issue of arbitrary instructions for now. Not have it do anything useful. So we should find that if we do mov 1 x3 slx x3 mov x3 null, that yes, we really want that. Well, I suppose that's actually interesting, isn't it? So it emits a move right 1 instruction, and that moves right 1. It keeps emitting move right 1 instructions, and that thing moves right. Okay, so if we then add in a move left instruction, it then goes, that's good as well. Two steps forward, 1 step back. Yes. So, like, we can now correctly generate movement. And I suppose we could have one processor whose job is movement and another processor whose job is grab and ungrab. And that would do the trick. We only have the slight problem of, as is traditional, running out of X-bus ports. But maybe we can daisy chain the processors somehow. Yeah, that would work. Also, we can simplify this one if it doesn't have to grab and ungrab. Unless we can come up with a way to do grab and ungrab in one instruction, or reduce this whole thing a bit. Actually, it kind of feels to me... So we do have a not instruction. But grab and ungrab is emit extend pulse, not the grab output, which actually has to be mov dat ac not mov ac dat mov dat x3, which is like 5 instructions. Feels like more ugly than I would have liked. I'm wondering if we can make this simpler. We can't really get time delays out of anything other than a processor. Just wondering if what we really want is something that on a falling edge of extend negates grab. But like, unless we pull in an entire programmable logic array, which is as expensive as our biggest processor, we can't do that. And like, obviously we could write that in a processor. It ends up being quite a small processor even. So we can just do, no, this is very silly, but right, so now a pulse on extend will also cause, I think, grab to change state. Can we then just do gen P110 there? P010 rather. So let's see what, currently that just dances back and forth. If we have it instead, I mean the sequence it actually needs is slip 1, morph 0 x3 slx x3 morph x3 null grab move 1 to the right, ungrab, move 1 to the left. I think that will now do the first move correctly. Damn, doesn't. It's being entertaining, but what's it doing then? The grab signal never seems to get properly changed. Okay. Oh no, we're waiting there. I'm waiting for it to go low there. Right, that might do better. No, it doesn't. What's going on there? So at the moment that extend is 0. Oh, I think extend goes high too late. And so we never detect it in this processor because this is a processor. And it reads... It like needs 50 knops in order to wait for this one to bring extend high. Otherwise it never detects that extend is high. Yeah. It doesn't work because we actually want to invert that each loop. That's fine. We say if input is high and the feedback connection is high, then make the feedback connection low, and no, it's when it drops, so we want to say no, that's not going to work. Maybe I can't do this. It's my first attempt at using the PLA, but I can't work out how to get it to do me my divide by 2 counter. I mean, it's got state here. What I want to say is when extend drops, but that means we need to remember. I don't know that we can do this with the PLA actually. Because I don't think I can edge trigger something in the right way in here. Harumph. And yes, I had a processor in there and it didn't work simply because it was too fast at reading the extend signal. So maybe I just need it. Yeah, maybe the answer is actually. Then I can't. You know, you have the thing, but that then takes. You then have to have a pause there, which is kind of awkward.
Ooh. You got some kind of giant thing with mastermind going on.
Yes, I don't think it helps me though. Sadly, I've been wanting to use it all game. It's a. It's I've forgotten what they call it. It's a complex programmable logic device.
Okay.
It's more advanced than a PAL because these are variable. So what it gives you is each of these is a large number of inputs AND gate, which ANDs together the signals it gets through any of those.
Not just the three figures.
And but which of these are, actually no, each of these big grids is a set of horizontal wires and vertical wires, and you can connect horizontal and vertical wires by clicking these. Then this is the output of this gate is the AND of those signals that have their buttons selected in this column, and this one's output is the AND of the signals that have their buttons selected in this column, then these are OR gates which do the same thing crosswise. So the output of this OR gate is those signals from the AND gates that have their buttons selected in this row.
Okay, that makes sense.
And each of these rows is one of the inputs either not negated or negated.
Right.
The little circle indicates negation there. And then we have some stuff on the right here that I don't fully understand. So this OR gate just outputs directly to that pin.
Okay.
This one outputs directly to that pin and also goes to a reset input on this latch, probably a latch. This one goes to the set input on that latch and optionally seems to go to that pin. But that pin, if you have it in that state, but that pin can also be configured as an input. And the output from that latch looks like it also goes into here. So possibly if you have that not configured as an input, then the output from the latch goes in there instead. I'm not quite sure.
Because the first one you picked.
Yes, so that it can store some state and use it on the next cycle.
Thing remotely plausible as a realistic.
Yes,
It is.
absolutely. That is pretty much a rather low end programmable. So there's a thing called a PAL, which is this, except that the settings in this area are fixed.
It was making sense until you mentioned the whole loop bit at the end.
Yeah, that's what makes it slightly more than a PAL in that it's not purely combinatorial. But it can be used in a purely combinatorial mode. I think in that mode it's purely combinatorial. Or if you just don't use these rows. And yes, this so I think this would be marketed as a CPLD, but it's basically a slightly advanced PAL. And yes, this is actually one of the more realistic parts of the game. But it's very rarely useful because you very rarely have a device that has that many digital inputs and outputs that you're trying to build, and it costs the same as the biggest processor. But it does have lots of digital inputs and outputs. But we'd only need two here, and I can't work out how you program it to say have one output that toggles on every pulse, on every negative going edge from an input. Because I don't think we can make it detect edges. So I think it would start flapping violently. But like you can see things in it light up as stuff happens. So now that's lighting up that output, and if I turn, so if we, yes, so this does indeed appear to read from that data and change when data changes, when we send something down the set input. But I don't think I can actually use this to solve my problem, sadly. I mean, I was hoping I could use this latch to implement the grab output. But I don't think I can detect a negative going pulse like that, and a negative going edge like that, which is annoying. Maybe we split this one up into like three little processors. We have one that demultiplexes commands between the motor processor and the ARM processor, as it were, and another one that actually, and a motor processor that issues commands to the motor, and an ARM processor that issues commands to the ARM. So that would be our motor processor, I think. And then the ARM processor just goes, doesn't even care about what's in X0. We probably want that to then send a signal saying it's done. And we always need then to wait for one step after any grab operation before a move happens. Actually, that's wait one step before a move operation. No, I think that's fine. Right. This one will probably end up being a 4000X. Because all that this needs to do now is wait for a command from there. If it's 0, write out to X3 and wait for a signal from X3 and discard the input from X3. Oops. Otherwise, precisely the same but with X2. Right, so the motor controller has run out of code. It's slightly ugly. Oh well, let's remove that sleep. And add the sleep on, waiting for the motor to there. Okay, that didn't work. That's meant to sleep 1 and then operate the grab by moving 0 to X3. That then tests that. It should then send that to X3, which it does. No, it doesn't. It's got the motor and the got those the wrong way around. Right. Okay, we've also got the outputs from that one the wrong way around. What? Why is that not working properly? So that sends the signal to the grabber. Which correctly picks up its object. Oh right, yes, this needs to actually signal back to the master processor that it's ready. Okay, we need to not have a sleep there, because actually we can grab as soon as we finish moving. Stone face. Right, so now we pass the first bit of tests merely by having stuffed the entire initial first sequence of moves into this processor. But that seems kind of reasonable. We've now got this lot which understands all of the moves that we can make and handles the timing and such like. And then we just need something to implement the intelligence over there. So I think I'll just tidy things up a bit by moving this processor as far to the right as I conveniently can. And then we'll tomorrow, or not tomorrow, next week, I feel sure I could cram that in a bit tighter. If we swapped the ports on this one, we wouldn't have to muck around with that bridge. And then we can move that one step further to the right. Right, so we've now got a nice lot of space for doing the input side on. And like it starts a great big system failure message because I tried to dump a container in a box that already had a container in it. Because at the moment the program just repeatedly moves objects from the left column to the right column, from the left thing to the slot one to its right. But that's otherwise reasonable, and now we just need to work out what's going to happen over here on the left. Right, hooray, let's leave that for now. And play our silly game.
Can you make it change the writing to a huge success when you win or lose?
No. I think I've forgotten the beginning. Right. Well, I got somewhere through it. Hooray, the game works. It perhaps should actually have a start button rather than just immediately launching into the simulation, but still. got a bit of space here. Maybe we could have a button somewhere. Not sure I can work out where. Oh, the other laptop's just died of... What? It had half an hour of battery life last time I checked. Oh well. Yeah, it's true. Right, well... it's still highlighted, but we've read everything we can read there. So, yes, tomorrow we will come back and... not tomorrow, Friday probably, we will come back and do the second half of this design. Or rather, the first half of this design that actually does thinking rather than the just moving robot arms around. So, until then, from Avalon City, somewhere on the high seas, good night.